Work on the Veterans Jobs Bill, 2:15 Eastern. Later today on Capitol Hill, they will also hold a congressional gold medal ceremony for Myanmar democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi. That's live at 3 p.m. Eastern. That'll be on C-SPAN 3 and cspan.org. The president meets with the Burmese leader this afternoon at 5. Now live coverage of the House here on C-SPAN.
The House will be in order. Prayer will be offered by our chaplain, Father Conroy.
Let us pray. Loving God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. We pray this day, O Lord, for peace in our world, that freedom will flourish and righteousness will be done. The attention of our nation is drawn toward an impending election, but there is work yet to be done. Send your Spirit upon the members of this people's house, that they might judiciously balance seemingly irreconcilable interests. Help them to execute their consciences and judgments with clarity and purity of heart, so that all might stand before you honestly and trust that you can bring forth righteous fruits from their labors. Bless this day and every day, and may all that is done be for your greater honor and glory. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance today will be led by the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Kucinich.
Ask that everyone rise to the pledge and that those in the gallery join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chair will entertain up to 15 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina rise? For what purpose does the gentleman rise?
To speak for 1 minute, please.
Does the gentleman ask unanimous consent?
Yes.
So ordered.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Today I had the privilege and honor to visit Walter Reed Hospital to say thank you to our wounded from Afghanistan and Iraq. And I saw those who have lost both legs, arms and legs, and it's just so sad to go there. But that brings me to the floor today to thank the chairman of the Armed Services Appropriations Committee, C.W. Bill Young, who has come out and said it's time to bring our troops home from Afghanistan. And I quote, I think we should remove ourselves from Afghanistan as quickly as we can. Mr. Speaker, that brings me to a couple of comments. I called the former Commandant of the Marine Corps and asked him 3 years ago to advise me on Afghanistan, and he has. He's been very, very loyal. I want to read his comments, and then I will close. I am most convinced than ever that we need to get our troops out of Afghanistan. When our friends turn out to be our enemy, it's time to pull the plug. We are now nothing more than a recruiting post for every malcontent in the Middle East. We need to wake up. I would say to the Speaker who just left the diocese, I would say to the leadership of the Republican Party, join us in bringing our troops home in the year 2013. No more should die for a lost cause like Afghanistan. I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purposes, gentleman from Ohio seek recognition?
Speaker, I request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Does the gentleman seek unanimous consent?
I do. Thank you.
Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. In 1992, the Food and Drug Administration decided that genetically modified organisms were the functional equivalent of conventional foods. They arrived at this decision without testing GMOs for allergenicity, toxicity, antibiotic resistance, and functional characteristics. As a result, hundreds of millions of acres of GMO crops were planted in America without the knowledge or consent of the American people. No safety testing, no long-term health studies. The FDA has received over 1 million comments from citizens demanding labeling of GMOs. 90% of Americans agree. So why no labeling? I'll give you one reason. The influence and the corruption of the political process by Monsanto. Monsanto has been a prime mover in GMO technology, a multi-million-dollar GMO lobby here, and a major political contributor. There is a chance that Monsanto's grip will be broken in California, where a GMO labeling initiative is on the ballot. And here in Congress, my legislation, H.R. 3553, will provide for a national labeling bill. Americans have a right to know if their food is genetically engineered. It's time for labeling. It's time for people to know how their food is being produced.
Does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, the United States granted Pakistan major non-NATO ally status to help us fight al-Qaeda and the Taliban. This status gives special foreign aid and defense benefits, such as expedited arms sales process. But Pakistan has proved it's no friend to America. Pakistan said no when we asked it to go after the terrorist havens. Pakistan twice tipped off terrorists making IEDs that kill Americans. Pakistan's intelligence arm, the ISI, helped the Haqqani Network, a designated foreign terrorist organization, to attack our embassy. Pakistan arrested and convicted the doctor who helped us locate Osama bin Laden, the world's #1 terrorist. I believe some of the money that we have given them goes to the Taliban. But Pakistan has given us no reason to trust them. They are a disloyal ally, a Benedict Arnold friend. I've introduced H.R. 6391 to strip Pakistan of its major non-NATO ally status. We don't need to pay Pakistan to betray us. They will do it for free. And that's just the way it is.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, Mr. Speaker.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The President has burdened the nation with 4 straight years of trillion-dollar deficits and has added more than $5 trillion to our national debt. His failed policies have done nothing but make our economy worse. Now he wants to turn our debt crisis into a defense crisis. The President's own Secretary of Defense has said the looming $500 billion in defense cuts would, quote, hollow out the force and inflict severe damage to our national defense, end quote. So far, the President has refused to offer any alternatives whatsoever. House Republicans remain committed to slashing spending and reducing the deficit, but not by arbitrarily cutting funding that supports our troops and their families. That's why we passed specific common-sense reforms to replace these dangerous cuts. It's time for the President to help us rescue our nation's defenders from these imminent cuts before they take effect and our national security is further compromised. I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on motions to suspend the rules on which a recorded vote or the yeas and nays are ordered, or on which the vote incurs objection under Clause 6 of Rule 20. Record votes on postponed questions will be taken later. For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 6060.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar number 484, H.R. 6060, a bill to amend Public Law 106-392 to maintain annual base funding for the Upper Colorado and San Juan fish recovery programs through fiscal year 2019.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Bishop, and the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Grijalva, each will control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Utah.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the bill under consideration.
Without objection.
Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
This is a good bill. It's got a great sponsor. Everyone should vote for it. I reserve.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. H.R. 660 authorizes the use of power revenues to fund 2 recovery programs in the Upper Colorado and San Juan rivers. Since 2011, Reclamation has continued to fund these programs at the cost of $3 million annually using existing authority. We support the intent of H.R. 6060 to recover listed species while allowing water and power operations to continue. We share the administration's commitment to this program. We also welcome the majority's recognition that compliance with the Endangered Species Act does not mean that water and power projects in the West go dry or go dark. This program provides ESA compliance for 2,320 water projects. These projects deliver more than 3.7 million acre-feet of water per year to Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. We are concerned, however, that the Republican rules only allow for the reauthorization of this program to 2019 versus the original goal of 2023. While we agree this legislation should move, it should be clear that at least on our side of the aisle, our commitment to this program through 2023 has not changed, and I reserve the balance of our time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. Gentleman from Utah.
I'm pleased to yield 2 minutes to my colleague who shares a border with me in our districts, the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Tipton.
Gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank Chairman Bishop for yielding. And Chairman Bishop, I'd also like to thank you for your leadership in leading the efforts on this important piece of legislation. The Upper Colorado and San Juan River basins provide key water and power resources in the 3rd Congressional District of Colorado and other districts in Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. These rivers are also home to 4 native fish species at risk of jeopardy, findings under the Endangered Species Act. Such a finding would impose on Western constituents dramatic losses in water availability and hydropower production, resulting in lost jobs and increased power rates at a time when we can least afford it. The Endangered Fish Recovery Act of 2012, extending authorization for the Upper Colorado and San Juan fish recovery implementation programs, will continue necessary efforts to recover 4 endangered fish species and provide Endangered Species Act compliance for federal, tribal, and non-federal water projects. These programs are supported by a broad swath of stakeholders, from local towns and counties to environmental groups and private industry, and are excellent examples of local solutions in lieu of onerous federal management and overregulation. I'm also pleased to see the cost reforms in this extended authorization. H.R. 6060 limits overhead to 3% and prohibits federal employees from traveling to Washington, D.C. to lobby for their programs, activities well beyond the bounds of their purview. These cost savings and their measures will allow for greater allocation of resources to species recovery. I'm optimistic that these programs can reach their goals in the coming years, recover the species in jeopardy, and safeguard the economic well-being of our communities, jobs, and everything connected with these efforts. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Arizona.
I yield back the remainder of our time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Utah.
I think some of our staff thought I should be a little bit more expansive in my remarks, so this is a really good bill with a really good sponsor, and you really should vote. Actually, this is one of those things where the nice part is for this mitigation plan that will allow these projects to go forward, taxpayers are paying no money. It's paid by the utility ratepayers of this particular area. If this is not reauthorized, it may put that part in jeopardy, and we did put some guidelines in there to protect so that the overhead that can be charged to the utility ratepayers has a potential limit on it. It's a good bill. Without, I urge its adoption. I yield back all time on the bill.
Gentleman yields back his time. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 6060? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the Chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 1461 as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 1461, a bill to authorize the Mescalero Apache tribe to lease adjudicated water rights.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Bishop, and the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Grijalva, each will control 20 minutes. Chair recognizes gentleman from Utah.
I ask unanimous consent again that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks, include extraneous materials on the bill under consideration.
Without objection.
And with that, Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to yield as much time as he may consume to the author of this particular bill, who does a great job in representing his constituents, and this is one of those examples, the gentleman from New Mexico, Mr. Pierce.
Gentleman from New Mexico is recognized for as much time as you may consume.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is straightforward and simple. It allows the Mescalero Indian tribe, the Mescalero Apaches, to permit or lease or transfer their water rights for a term of up to 99 years. Now, the courts decided that they would have these rights back in 1993, but we need the legislation that would permit it. This effort is bipartisan. It's even being pursued in both the House and the Senate. Senator Bingaman has a bill that looks exactly like this. So it's non-controversial, simply does the right thing. It's important. It allows the tribe self-determination, but it also gives them economic opportunities. The leasing of the water rights will provide them with revenues that they desperately need. It's for the best interest of all New Mexicans. During this current drought, water is a scarce supply in New Mexico, and this would allow the tribe to lease water to communities that are desperately needing water at this point. It's important to the tribes, it's important to New Mexico, and I would recommend that all vote for H.R. 1461 and urge its passage and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I rise in support of H.R. 1461, legislation that would authorize the Mescalero Apache tribe of New Mexico to lease its adjudicated and quantified water rights for up to 99 years pursuant to state law. There is a tremendous need for water in south-central New Mexico among the Mescalero Apache tribe's non-Indian neighbors. The tribe has approximately 2,300 acre-feet of water to meet this need, which is ready to lease to the surrounding communities. Revenue generated by such leasing would be used to fund basic tribal government services such as senior care center, infrastructure development, and academic scholarships. Because the tribe's water rights were quantified by adjudication, legislation is necessary to authorize the tribe to lease its water. H.R. 1461 provides this simple authorization that would only make the tribe's valuable resource available to those in need, but also give the tribe a much-needed source of additional government revenue. During the subcommittee hearing on the bill, the administration expressed concern that H.R. 1461 did not limit tribal authority for leasing water to off-reservation location, and that such a clarification was needed to prevent possible application of state law to on-reservation water leases. Committee staff worked together to amend H.R. 1461 to clarify that the tribe's authorities are limited to off-reservation water leases. The tribe can now be assured that the state law will never apply to on-reservation water leases pursuant to H.R. 1461. Speaker, we support H.R. 1461 and reserve the balance of our time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Utah.
That's that. Could I inquire if there are any other speakers on?
No, I don't, Mr. Chairman.
Then I'm ready to make one last statement and quit if the gentleman from Arizona is.
Yield back the our time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Utah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, this is one of those bills where the majority and the minority have worked with the tribe to clarify. This applies to off-reservation water. Their leasing authority with the tribe still stays in place. It's intact. It's a technical amendment that has been cleared by all interested parties and moves us forward. I urge its adoption and yield back the balance of our time.
Gentleman yields back his time. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 1461 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the Chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 3319 as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar number 487, H.R. 3319, a bill to allow the Pascua Yaqui tribe to determine the requirements for membership in that tribe.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Bishop, the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Grijalva, each will control 20 minutes. Chair recognizes gentleman from Utah.
And again, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the bill under consideration.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, since I doubt very seriously if I can get through any kind of statement and say Pahasqui Yaqui tribe accurately, it would be my intent, if I could, to yield 10 minutes to the gentleman from Arizona to explain his bill. It's a good bill. We support it, and he can say it properly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, and yield myself as much time as I may consume, and appreciate Chairman Bishop's indulgence at this point. Speaker, I rise in support of H.R. 3319, a bill that would authorize the Pascua Yaqui tribe to set its own membership criteria by replacing congressionally mandated criteria that artificially limit enrollment to certain Yaqui people based on application deadlines and other requirements that do not reflect tribal input. H.R. 3319 reflects the modern congressional policy of allowing federally recognized tribes to set their own membership criteria. The bill eliminates current membership requirements imposed by statute and replaces them with a requirement that members possess any degree of Indian blood as determined by the tribe. The Pascua Yaqui tribe, like all federally recognized tribes, has the inherent right to determine its own membership without restrictions imposed by the federal government. Mr. Speaker, I ask my colleagues to support the passage of 3319, and I yield back the remainder of our time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Utah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the House actually passed a bill similar to this on tribal membership that recognized the tribe in Texas last year, so there is precedent for this event, and I would therefore have no objection to the passing of this resolution today and urge people's support of it. And with that, I yield back all the remainder of time.
Gentleman yields back his time. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 3319 as amended? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
You have a note or something.
Okay.
I'll take the big stuff.
You guys.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Florida seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House suspend the rules and agree to H.Res. 786 as introduced.
The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 786, resolution honoring the 4 United States public servants who died in Libya and condemning the attacks on United States diplomatic facilities in Libya, Egypt, and Yemen.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Ross-Leitonen, and the gentleman from New York, Mr. Engel, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and to insert extraneous material into the record on this measure.
Without objection.
I thank the Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, sir. I want to thank Speaker Boehner, Leader Cantor, Leader Pelosi, and Mr. Hoyer for spearheading this critical resolution about the recent terrorist attacks. Our thoughts and our prayers are with the families of Ambassador Christopher Stevens, Sean Smith, Tyrone Woods, and Glenn Doherty, and all of those injured in the attack. Our condolences must also go out to the entire U.S. diplomatic corps. On the 11th anniversary of the attacks of September 11, 2001, radical Islamists attacked the United States Embassy in Benghazi, and our ambassador and 3 other State Department personnel were murdered. Concurrently, in Cairo, our U.S. Embassy there was assaulted by a mob of extremists who breached its walls and desecrated our American flag. Since that fateful day, Mr. Speaker, we have witnessed a dramatic escalation of anti-American protests and actions throughout the region, from assaulting the embassy in Tunis to the attack on peacekeepers in the Sinai. The premise that the violence and the protests are solely based on that obscure, hateful video is patently false. Rather, it is symptomatic of a broader effort by our enemies in the region to foment hatred of the U.S. Yet the hesitation on the part of this administration and the schizophrenia in response to this latest crisis is a cause for concern. The U.S. has nothing for which to apologize, including the exercise of freedom of expression. Surrendering our principles before an unruly mob or violent extremist will only embolden the likes of al-Qaeda and reinforce the notion that more attacks against the United States will change core American policies and American principles. The perpetrators of the attacks must be held accountable by our allies in the region, and the administration must take the lead. There is no excuse whatsoever for attacking diplomatic missions and murdering diplomats. The administration must place the governments on notice that their conduct during this crisis will determine the nature of our relations moving forward. The Libyan and Yemeni governments have both apologized for and strongly condemned the attacks on U.S. diplomatic posts in their host countries. They have been fully cooperating with us. By contrast, the Egyptian government took over a day to issue a weak statement discouraging violence against foreign embassies, but it was, alas, too little too late. This cannot happen again, and Congress will be closely monitoring the ongoing protests and reassessing our assistance packages and our approaches based on the responses of these governments to assaults on our embassies and our institutions. The lack of a firm response will undermine our U.S. interest in the region. We must clearly articulate and implement a policy that rewards our allies, encourages moderate forces within the region, and punishes our enemies. At this critical moment, Mr. Speaker, the United States must affirm support to our friends and allies and clearly differentiate them from our enemies. The United States must continue to stand up for American values and stand with the voices of moderation. With that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of our time.
Gentlelady's time is reserved. Gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of this resolution honoring Ambassador Chris Stevens, Sean Smith, Glenn Doherty, and Tyrone Woods, 4 patriotic Americans who lost their lives in a cowardly and despicable attack on the United States consulate in Benghazi, Libya. On a daily basis, the men and women of the State Department assume great risks in dangerous locations all over the world. They conduct diplomacy, promote democracy, build civil society, educate, mediate, negotiate, and defend U.S. interests worldwide. They are the face of America abroad, and our country is safer, freer, and more prosperous because of what they do. Ambassador Stevens was one of our best and brightest and most courageous. He had served in Israel, Egypt, Syria, and Saudi Arabia, but Libya became the centerpiece and defining mission of his career. He was on the ground in Benghazi leading U.S. diplomatic efforts from the earliest days of the revolution. He worked tirelessly on behalf of U.S.-Libyan relations and the well-being of U.S. citizens living in Libya. I am particularly angry that this sickening attack occurred in a country that the U.S., with Chris Stevens in the lead, did so much to liberate. Ambassador Stevens will be missed for his knowledge of the Middle East, his exemplary commitment to service, his warm and welcoming personality, and his basic human decency. Sean Smith, a Foreign Service Information Management Officer, was a father and 10-year veteran of the U.S. State Department. Prior to arriving in Benghazi, he served in Brussels, Baghdad, Pretoria, Montreal, and The Hague. Glenn Doherty was a former Navy SEAL from Boston. He was killed while serving on the ambassador's security detail and helping to evacuate the wounded. Tyrone Woods spent 2 decades as a SEAL, was a father of 3, and had worked protecting diplomats in dangerous posts for the past 2 years. Mr. Speaker, our thoughts and prayers are with the families of all the dedicated public servants whose lives were lost. Libya owes the American people a full investigation of this incident in complete cooperation with U.S. authorities. The killers must be found and brought to justice. I stand by ready to assist in any way I can. With that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. Gentlelady from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will reserve the balance of our time.
Gentlelady continues to reserve. Gentleman from New York.
Yes, I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Kucinich.
Gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 5 minutes.
I certainly join with my colleagues in mourning the passing under tragic circumstances of Ambassador Stevens, as well as the deaths of Sean Smith and security officers Tyrone Woods and Glenn Doherty, as well as all those who were injured. I think that all of us can agree that what happened to Ambassador Stevens and the rest of the diplomatic staff should concern everyone, concern all Americans. These attacks were wrong, and it's appropriate that we honor Ambassador Stevens. The resolution, as I read it, is not complete, though, because this discussion that we're having here on the floor is missing some elements, and I'd like to bring them forward right now. We have to ask the question, why was that consulate in Benghazi, Libya, so lightly defended to begin with? Did anyone know that Benghazi was still a flashpoint? I mean, we overthrew the government. Did anyone know that when the government fell, that al-Qaeda's flag was flying over Benghazi? Did anyone know about al-Qaeda's presence in Libya that came after the war? That would have been a constant factor to be mindful of with respect to protecting those who serve. Why wasn't more care given to protect U.S. personnel? And the other thing is, there were warnings in diplomatic circles, specifically with respect to Libya, because of the ferment that was going on, that has been going on in the broader Muslim world. These are concerns that should be discussed by the Congress. Doesn't take away anything from the sacrifice that was given. But we have to ask some questions here. We also have to be aware that U.S. policy in Libya is murky at best and a huge mistake at worst. We had debates on this floor about Libya, and we know that Congress was not consulted. The current issue of Vanity Fair is worth the attention of every member of Congress because it made it abundantly clear on what is a prime constitutional responsibility of Congress. Article 1, Section 8, the power to declare war was essentially usurped by the administration. This is not a small matter. Would we have been in Libya if Congress had had an upfront vote immediately? You know, 2 days ago we celebrated Constitution Day. Are we celebrating the Constitution every day or just one day? There are consequences for not following the Constitution. There are consequences for our citizens here at home and citizens abroad. And this needs to be brought up in the context of this debate. We cannot pretend that United States policy, which often lacks congressional involvement, with drones flying over Yemen and Somalia and Pakistan and Afghanistan and innocents killed, that there's not going to be a blowback or a backlash. It is wrong for any of our people to have their lives on a line where they lose their lives. It's awful. And I stand here today in support of this resolution only because I want to be on record as joining my colleagues on this matter of making sure that we pay tribute to those whose lives were put on the line for this country. But let me tell you, we cannot ignore the deeper questions here. Why wasn't that consulate well defended? We cannot ignore the question, why wasn't Congress consulted on the decision to go to war against Libya? There are consequences for these things. The whole country should mourn Ambassador Stevens' death and the deaths of all of those who proudly served this country, who were taken in this fit of outrage that swept across Libya. But we need to remember a few other things, too, about how we got there and why those people who put their lives on the line to serve, why their lives were put in jeopardy. I reserve the balance of my time.
This time has expired. Gentlelady from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm so pleased to yield 1 minute to our esteemed Majority Leader, Mr. Cantor, the gentleman from Virginia.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the Speaker and thank the gentlelady for leadership in bringing this resolution forward. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of this resolution to condemn the violence against our diplomatic missions in Libya, Egypt, Yemen, and elsewhere. We acknowledge and honor the personal sacrifice of the brave Americans who gave their lives in service to our nation. U.S. Ambassador Chris Stevens, Foreign Service Information Management Officer Sean Smith, and Security Officers Tyrone Woods and Glenn Doherty tragically lost their lives far from home in Benghazi, Libya, where they were promoting American interests and helping the Libyan people secure the hard-fought gains of their revolution. These heroes died upholding the liberty, democracy, and moderation we value as a nation. In the wake of their deaths and the ongoing protests and violence, Americans want to know what our strategy is for protecting our diplomats, our interests, and our values in a region that is undergoing a profound and unfortunately sometimes violent political transformation. Americans are rightly worried about the anti-Americanism and Islamic extremism that has reared its head. I share the concern that Americans have about the situation in the Middle East, and I believe the President should explain his strategy for navigating the uncertain waters before us. But I know that one policy we must not pursue is to turn our back on this troubled region. Withdrawing from the region would embolden the extremists and justify Osama bin Laden's strategy, leaving the moderates who share our values and who desire democracy to combat the forces of violence alone. We are not alone in this fight. From Morocco to Indonesia, there are brave Muslims who oppose violence, who desire good relations with the United States, who respect religious freedom, and who risk their lives by preaching tolerance and moderation. We should redouble our efforts to stand with these Muslims who seek to protect a great religion from being subverted by extremists. We should not abandon Libya because terrorists seek to undermine a government that is making progress towards establishing a democracy and that is joining the fight against terrorism. Egypt's democratic revolution is unfinished, and much work remains to ensure that its first election is not its last. We should work with Egypt's leaders to help them build a democracy that respects individual rights, women, and religious freedom, while being clear that we will not tolerate policies that give any ground to terrorists or undermine our security or that of our ally Israel. American assistance is not an entitlement, and Congress expects Egypt's new leaders to respect the parameters and conditions of our generous aid. America must not abandon its partners, just as we should not apologize for our perceived sins. We must demonstrate leadership. We should lead a coalition against the radical mullahs in Iran, who foment instability and support extremists throughout the region. America should combat Iran's support for terrorism and thwart its aspirations for nuclear weapons. America should be leading an international effort to bring overwhelming pressure on the Assad regime in Syria to end once and for all its state sponsorship of terrorism and to bring about a new government in Syria before that society fractures beyond repair. Mr. Speaker, America has long been a force for good and stability in the Middle East. When we have retreated in the past from playing this role, we have paid dearly. Withdrawing from Lebanon in the 1980s ceded that country to Syria and Hezbollah. Failing to respond to al-Qaeda's attack in the 1990s led Osama bin Laden to believe he could attack the American homeland. The extremists in the region believe today, as bin Laden believed then, that we do not have the stomach to defend our friends and our interests, that we will abandon the Middle East. We must prove them wrong by responding to this challenge with purpose and strength. We must stand with our friends and hold our enemies to account. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from New York.
I have no further speakers. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentlelady from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, in closing, I would like to reinforce a few points. First, our thoughts and our prayers are with the families of the American diplomats murdered in Libya as we stand with them in this difficult time. Secondly, there is no excuse whatsoever for attacking diplomatic missions and murdering diplomats. Third, the U.S. has nothing for which to apologize. Let us not apologize for the exercise of freedom of expression. The perpetrators of these attacks must be held accountable. Finally, the United States Congress will be reassessing our assistance packages based on the responses of the various affected governments to assaults on our embassies and our institutions. Nothing can justify the terrorist attacks carried out against our fellow Americans and our diplomatic post and our U.S. interests around the world. The Americans killed were committed to helping the Libyan people, committed to help them secure a better, more stable, more peaceful future. Yet radicals, the radicals who seek to hijack such freedom, security, and prosperity from the people of the Middle East and in North Africa, those who deny their own people basic human rights and universal freedoms, answered our dedication and our commitment of these courageous Americans by burning our mission and killing our diplomats. So let us be clear, no apologies are needed. Nothing justifies these violent actions. And to the people throughout the Middle East, North Africa, and throughout the world who are oppressed, the United States and our personnel overseas stand with you. We stand for freedom despite the threats from extremist elements. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of our time.
Gentlelady yields back her time. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and agree to House Resolution 786? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The resolution is agreed to, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. What purpose does the gentlelady from Florida seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House suspend the rules and agree to House Resolution 3783 as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
H.R. 3783, a bill to provide for a comprehensive strategy to counter Iran's growing presence and hostile activity in the Western Hemisphere and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Ross-Leighton, and the gentleman from New York, Mr. Engel, each will control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentlelady from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and to insert extraneous material into the record on this measure.
Without objection.
Thank you, sir. I yield myself such time as I may consider.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong support today of H.R. 3783, the Countering Iran in the Western Hemisphere Act of 2012, a bill introduced by my good friend, Mr. Duncan, an esteemed member of our Foreign Affairs Committee. I would like to thank him for his hard work on the issues addressed in this important bill. In February, the Committee on Foreign Affairs held a hearing entitled Ahmadinejad's Tour of Tyrants and Iran's Agenda in the Western Hemisphere in order to examine the threat to U.S. national security posed by Iran and Iranian-sponsored activities in the Western Hemisphere. 1 month later, this bipartisan measure was unanimously adopted by our Committee on Foreign Affairs. Mr. Speaker, as we have witnessed in the last few weeks, the violence perpetrated by extremists in the Middle East against our embassies and our consulates undermines our foreign policy objectives, and we must prevent these vicious attacks from occurring in our region. Let us not forget that 18 years ago, Iranian so-called diplomats readily partnered with Hezbollah, a U.S.-designated foreign terrorist organization, to carry out a deadly attack against the AMIA Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Iran has only increased its subversive actions since then, and over the past decade, the regime has increased diplomatic and economic ties between Iran and the radical regimes in Latin America. Iran's Ahmadinejad made 2 trips to Latin America this year to visit his fellow tyrants, the Castro brothers in Cuba, Ortega in Nicaragua, Correa in Ecuador, Chavez in Venezuela, and Morales in Bolivia. In an attempt to promote its extremist propaganda, the Iranian regime recently launched a Spanish television network to reach a larger international audience centered in the Western Hemisphere. More embassies and cultural centers have opened in Bolivia, Ecuador, Nicaragua, Colombia, Chile, and Uruguay, in addition to its existing diplomatic missions in Cuba, Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, and Venezuela. According to a U.S. intelligence analyst, these diplomatic missions are simply fronts for Iran to carry out its nefarious activities in the region and a potential platform to increase the presence of the Quds Force operatives, a designated foreign terrorist organization and an arm of the Revolutionary Guard of Iran. According to media reports, Hezbollah, which is Iran's proxy, has established a training base in Nicaragua. It is also concerning that the Ortega regime in Nicaragua does not require any visas for Iranian officials to enter the country which can then become the gateway to enter the United States through our southern border. 10 days ago, there were news reports stating that several alleged Hezbollah members were arrested in Mexico. Iran has worked tirelessly to promote its extremist ideologies and support efforts to undermine the democratic governments throughout the region. H.R. 3783 requires the Secretary of State to outline a U.S. government-wide strategy to fight the aggressive actions of Iran and its proxies, such as Hezbollah in the Western Hemisphere, toward a comprehensive policy stance that will protect U.S. security interests. This legislation also calls for the administration to develop a plan to secure the U.S. borders with Canada and Mexico and prevent operatives from entering the United States. It also calls for a plan to isolate Iran and its proxies from their source of financial support and addresses efforts by foreign persons, entities, and governments in the region that may be assisting Iran in evading sanctions. And lastly, it also develops a plan to protect U.S. interests and assets in our Western Hemisphere, including embassies, consulates, businesses, and cultural organizations. We must ensure that the United States is actively monitoring this threat and takes appropriate steps to counter the Iranian regime's agenda in our hemisphere. I strongly support passage of this legislation, and with that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of our time.
Gentlelady's time is reserved. Gentleman from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of H.R. 3783, the Countering Iran in the Western Hemisphere Act of 2012, and I'd like to thank the sponsor of this legislation, Mr. Duncan, and the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Ms. Ross-Leighton, for their leadership on this issue. This bill makes available $1 million of Andean counter-narcotics funding for the State Department to generate an assessment of the challenge posed to our country by Iran's present and hostile activity in the Western Hemisphere, as well as a strategy to address whatever threats we may face from the Iranian regime. Tehran's pursuit of a nuclear weapons capability, its continued support for international terrorism, and its abuse of basic human rights require the United States to maintain extreme vigilance in monitoring and countering its threats around the world. Though our goal has not yet been realized, thanks to the leadership of Congress and the Obama administration, more pressure has been placed on the Iranian regime than ever before. While Iran's behavior poses a clear and obvious danger to its own people, its neighbors, and to our ally Israel, its presence closer to our shores also deserves watchful attention. The Foreign Affairs Committee has heard significant testimony on this issue from both administration and private sources. And in my capacity of first chairman and now ranking member of the Western Hemisphere Subcommittee and the Foreign Affairs Committee, I think there is ample evidence that Iran is up to no good in the Western Hemisphere. Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad has openly and defiantly signaled to the U.S. in his 6 trips to our hemisphere that he is trolling for friends. Although it seems what Iran actually places on the table of the countries he visits is a stack of unmet promises, it is important that the U.S. government remain vigilant and dig much deeper into the nature and effectiveness of these Iranian regime actions. None of this occurs in a vacuum. Iran was complicit in the horrific bombings of the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires and the Amia Jewish Community Center, also in Buenos Aires, which I have visited on numerous occasions. This happened in the first half of the 1990s, so it can easily be said that the first terrorist attacks on Latin American soil happened with Iran in control. And we have evidence of Iran's increasing willingness to conduct an attack on U.S. soil, such as the discovery this year of a twisted Iranian plot to assassinate the Saudi ambassador here in Washington. We must be alert to any Iranian attempts to circumvent sanctions and stand against efforts to curry favor with our neighbors to loosen those sanctions. We should continue to monitor intelligence links and watch the Iranian diplomatic corps, given its historical involvement in nefarious acts. We should keep a close eye on financial transactions, the chaotic nexus of drug money and terrorism in this region. In particular, this deserves serious notice. Finally, it's important to express that my support for this legislation is not in any way an indication that the Obama administration has not taken this issue seriously. The President has himself stated that his administration will continue to monitor Iran's activities in the Western Hemisphere closely, and I have personally engaged enough administration officials to be persuaded that they understand the gravity of the situation and are giving it the attention it deserves. Still, we must be particularly vigilant towards the relationship between Iran and Venezuela, given the opacity of the ties between the regimes governing each country and the anti-American bombast of their leaders. However, there are some positive notes in our region. I would like to extend my appreciation to Brazil, the largest democracy in the hemisphere outside of the United States, which has significantly cooled its relationship with Iran under President Rousseff and has cast important votes in the UN Human Rights Council critical of the Iranian regime. Today's polarization and bluster in Washington on so many issues can have the effect of making it difficult to separate fact from fiction. We cannot let that happen here. The stakes are too high. So with this legislation, we provide both a strong signal to the administration to continue to monitor this situation closely, as well as the resources to look across U.S. agency efforts and enforcement capabilities to make sure they are in lockstep. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
This time, gentlelady from Florida.
Mr. Speaker, I proudly yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Duncan, a member of our House Committee on Foreign Affairs, Homeland Security, and Natural Resources Committee, but more importantly, the author of this bill today. Thank you, Mr. Duncan.
Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Madam Chairwoman, for your leadership on this very important issue. I want to pause to thank the gentleman from New York, Mr. Higgins, for his leadership on the other side of the aisle. Last week, Congress took a rare break from our work here and from partisanship. We came together to remember those who died on 9/11 and during the war on terrorism. We stood together on the Capitol steps and we pledged that we would never forget the heartbreaking events of that fateful day. One of the ways we can honor the memory of those who lost their lives is to be prepared, so that our country will never again experience such a tragedy. Mr. Speaker, that's why I'm standing before you today, thanking you for putting, and the members of the body for putting partisanship aside and working together to keep our families and our communities safe from new and emerging threats to our nation. We're all aware of the Iranian nuclear threat in the Middle East and globally. But there's another potential threat from Iran and its proxies closer to home. That threat is an emerging Iranian-backed terror network here in the Western Hemisphere. What we already know is very alarming. We know about last October's foiled Iranian plot to assassinate the Saudi Arabian ambassador to the U.S. here on American soil. We know that Iran has vastly expanded its diplomatic and economic footprint in Latin America. For example, we know about the Department of Defense 2012 annual report on Iran that stated that during the past 3 decades, Iran has methodically cultivated a network of sponsored terrorist surrogates capable of targeting U.S. and Israeli interests. Just this month, a Brazilian journal, Beja, and others reported on a police seizure in Bolivia of 2 tons of minerals believed initially to contain uranium, but more likely tantalum, the mineral that is in demand for, and among other things, nuclear reactors and missile parts. We know that 2 weeks ago, an Israeli news organization revealed that Iran has established Hezbollah terrorist training base in northern Nicaragua, with operatives being trained at the base to attack Israeli and U.S. targets in the event of a raid on Iranian nuclear installations. And we know that just last week, press reports revealed that 3 suspected Hezbollah members were arrested just south of our border in Mexico. None of this should come as a surprise. Iran has publicly stated that increasing their presence and ties to Latin America is one of their top foreign policy objectives. However, we must have the capabilities to defend ourselves from potential Iranian attacks here on the homeland. We must be able to clearly identify this emerging threat and develop strategies which include working with our neighbors here in this hemisphere to prevent Iran from being a danger to our country here at home. Mr. Speaker, that's why this Bill 3783 establishes a strong U.S. posture, policy, and relationship with Latin American countries. It protects U.S. interests and assets in the Western Hemisphere, such as embassies, consulates, businesses, energy pipelines, and cultural organizations, including threats to U.S. allies. It addresses the vital national security interests of the United States by ensuring that energy supplies from Western Hemisphere are free from the influence of any foreign government that would attempt to manipulate or disrupt global energy markets. This bill requires a secure U.S. border, with the U.S. working in coordination with governments of Mexico and Canada to prevent Iranian operatives from entering the United States. This bill counters efforts by foreign persons, entities, and governments in the region which may assist Iran in evading U.S. and international sanctions. Mr. Speaker and Madam Chairwoman, I urge that members of this body come together and vote for this very important issue, H.R. 3783. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I now yield 4 minutes to my friend and colleague from the great state of New York, who is the lead Democrat